Alright, hello, my name's Carl Adriano.
And I am Jacob Dubberly, and this is our final podcast for our leadership journalism that we've been doing throughout the semester. Now, to start, we've got a few basic questions that we're going to answer about our past journalism experiences and the assignment itself, what we'd change if if we could do the assignment for a class of our own, and how it impacted our time as plebes, and how it will impact our time at the academy and beyond. So first, I'll ask Carl, what type of journaling experience, if any, did you have before this class?
I'd say I had zero to no experience, and I'd say that with that in mind, that I was very unorganized and I didn't really have my thoughts together, and I was very preoccupied at times, especially with thoughts always coming through my head,
Sure.
right? And so that's what kept me distracted rather than being more focused on the things that I needed to focus on. How about you?
In terms of journalism experience, I didn't really have much. I've always been a note taker. Like on Sundays when I go to church, I'll take notes. I'm sure that's like a subcategory of journalism, but it was inconsistent.
Yep.
And it wasn't really applicable to my everyday living. And then I was also pretty organized with my goal setting, and that's also a different subcategory of journalism. But once again, like I didn't have the entire arena of journalism that I experienced while in this class.
So you're saying you had structure, but not very consistent at it.
Yeah, exactly. I had a little bit of structure with a lot of inconsistency.
I'd say, especially with the inconsistency, you see that there's a struggle in between that. So, what about journaling was struggle that you to keep it consistent?
Exactly. So sometimes I looked at journalism and journaling at the end of the day as like something I had to do and not something that I could use to grow myself and better improve myself. And that kind of touches on the growth versus fixed mindset we studied in class, where I saw journalism some nights as an assignment. I wasn't really getting as much out of that as if I saw it as an opportunity for self-development and using journalism to reflect on how my day went and really getting in touch with what I achieved in a day, where I fell short, what I did, what habits I progressed, and instead it was just like another check in the box sometimes. So that was my biggest struggle, was taking the act of journalism and making sure that it was a conscious decision to put my heart into it and not just checking it off as another assignment, like a to-do list type thing.
I understand. I had the same similar struggles because it was hard for me to be consistent with something that I had to do rather than
Exactly.
not knowing the benefit of it. So it was a fight for me. Especially, I'd say I noticed. So I had a period where I did not journal after we were done with the assignment, and when we did journal, and I saw a lot of consistency, especially in my habits, the new habits I wanted to do.
Right.
Then after journaling, I kind of stopped that, and I kind of, went back to the phase of being preoccupied and then
Right.
being distracted again. And I'd say that's a big benefit of journaling. Do you see any other benefits?
Yeah, for sure. The journaling allowed me to get what I was feeling onto paper. Like being a midshipman at the Naval Academy, you've got all these thoughts. Everything's rushing around, and a lot of the time you don't have time to sit down and understand what you're actually thinking. You're jumping from class to class constantly. You're going to and from, and you don't have time to reflect, like genuine reflection. And journalism allowed me to sit down, write what I wanted to achieve, write what I did achieve in working towards that bigger goal, and understand how I'm going to progress the next day in order to achieve the larger things in life.
I see that in a big picture, but also a benefit I saw, like in a small picture in everyday life, is you have to really, because the data, journaling gives you data, and with that data, you can really see, like what you said, like your subconscious self that you don't really see every day, that you take for granted, like even the three things that you actually find, you're thankful for.
Right.
That's the things that we find that we don't really I'd say exemplify every day, right? Just that simple act just makes us, I'd say, reflect back on our day. And since we're always so stressful, we just want to keep moving forward. But it's good to step back and then really see what is going on.
Exactly. Towards the middle of our journaling this semester, my 3 things I was grateful for list, it started kind of getting a little wacky. Like if you read it, it wouldn't be something you'd expect. Like my 3 things I was grateful for would be like hot water, warm food, and like electricity. Just things we completely take for granted, but when you start thinking about everything you've been blessed with and everything that you have at your disposal, you really understand that Like you've been given so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That also comes down with the mindset you have, with the growth
Mhm.
mindset versus a fixed. If you had a fixed, you don't find anything to really be thankful for. But
Yep.
having that journal forces you to actually find a deeper meaning to like what you could be thankful for as well.
I completely
And
agree
say,
with that.
how could that change your character? Do you think?
So I think one of the biggest character flaws that any leader can have is taking the small things for granted. They expect everything, and because of that, the small little things, the things that sometimes slip through the cracks, they're not taken for what they actually are. Like being a leader, I think, first of all, is a relationship. That's of course the title,
Mhm.
but it's getting the small things right, especially in the face of overwhelming adversity. It's staying true to the small values that you have, and it's aligning your actions with your values, no matter how small they may seem. It's the consistency where your subordinates can look up to you as a consistent source of leadership and good influence.
I understand that,
Mhm.
especially something that I really saw from my experience. I know that you can relate to this, especially like who did you look up to growing up?
Definitely my dad.
Yep, especially right, because he's been through the same, maybe similar situations as you have, from growing up to
Mhm.
discovering himself independently. I'd say with like just looking back at our journals can be like, and our subordinates going through the phases of life of growing up, become independent. We can say, give them tips or even see like where the similarities where they are messing up, where they can fix it faster, or even just help them pursue their goals more forward rather than just being stagnant. Because there's a moment in my life where I was stagnant for a few years, and it's because I had a fixed mindset, and no one told me until someone introduced me about growth mindset is when I started thinking that way.
Perfect. So, about the assignment itself,
Mhm.
if you could assign a class this journalism assignment, what would be one thing you'd change about it? Like one addition? So we had the habits, the grateful for, your act of kindness, and your notes.
Yep.
Is there something you'd add or subtract from those
Mhm.
4 basic cornerstones?
Well, for me, I'm more of a person of visual learning. So instead of just writing out stuff like paragraphs and just note taking, I'd rather see it in a grid, right?
Okay.
More like not just how like how your day went and all that, because you can write on the notes section. It's no criteria,
Right.
but I would have to force the students to actually say how they're feeling, because like that comes with emotional intelligence. If you live passively with not even like, if without mentioning your emotions, I feel like that's when you start to just become a robot, and like to see you can't really be, what's that called, be feeling for other people and understand others but only yourself. And it also comes an ego side to where you will have to like focus on other feelings as well, and not just yours.
Sure. So you're basically saying that as part of the assignment, you want to see your individual subordinates be more in tune with their
Yep.
emotional intelligence.
And I want, like, with the visual part, I remember it's like make it almost like a graph to where like
Okay.
you mark the time, like this, you mark a star for maybe for this habit that you finished,
Sure.
or it can be like a number for how are you feeling out of 10,
Right.
and stuff like that, just to make it you can see from like a month perspective, seeing like how your day is going, like a graph of how you feel, going up and down or going up, down, down, to really see that even though you're going through a struggle, look at the past days. Maybe you were happy before. It's
Right.
not just always going downhill.
That's good.
Mhm.
So I think if I could change one thing about the assignment, it would be implementing a category that's just labeled shortcoming.
Mhm.
And that's going to make every single person who's journaling reflect on where they fell short that day.
Mhm.
And now I'm sure that you could have written about that in the extra notes category part,
Mhm.
but if you explicitly had a category designed for where you fell short, it forced yourself to look back and genuinely examine where you failed that day. And because failure is one of the most ideal teachers for an officer or any leader, then I think the most emotional growth that can come out of journaling is going to be through documenting your shortcomings and your failures.
I completely agree about that, because I don't know if you remember, but Professor Sanchez, Major Sanchez, was telling us how she went to adjudication,
Right.
saying how like the more the more they knew about the person,
Mhm.
the more they discovered it's more about like what she was self-conscious about.
Right.
Seeing that, so with that, with like what your concept is, being able to see, to really just be vulnerable with ourselves and put what we are self-conscious of, and how that weakness can be even stronger, can help us with their character. So I absolutely agree with that.
Nice. So, after journaling for the entire semester, Carl, what, if any, impact did this have on your leadership approach, and how do you plan on utilizing this tool in the future?
I'd say being able to really have data and being able to share it with our leadership class,
Mhm.
I'm able to relate even more with our subordinates. It's our classmates.
Right.
Because I'd say it's kind of hard for us to, not communicate, but to have a deep conversation in 5 minutes, but being able to share the emotion, like, yo, I was sad at this moment, or, I was been going through this because of classes. It's easier to relate. And with that knowledge in mind, once we have subordinates down and they're feeling a certain way, we can approach it to a more humanitarian standpoint, to where it's more
Yep.
emotionally intelligent, to where it's more directed to a goal rather than just leaving them behind and just moving on.
Sure. I appreciate that. I think that leadership this semester the journalism impacted my leadership styles by really revealing to me how different every day can be. Like, I remember in my journal, one day I'd be on fire. Like, everything was perfect. I was hitting my goals. I was being nice to people. People were being nice to me. Everything seemed perfect. But the very next day, it could have been the exact opposite. You could have fallen short on all three of your goals. You don't know what's happening. You didn't do well at practice. You got a bad test grade back. And those ups and downs in life, they can really define your character,
Mhm.
because it's how you respond to those that other people see, right? So
Yep.
it impacted my leadership style by allowing me to understand that the people that I lead are not always going to have the best days.
Mhm.
They're going to have their ups and downs, but the consistency of your integrity and your character that you bring on a daily basis is going to reveal to them the expectation.
So next year we're gonna be youngsters and we're gonna be mentoring the plebes, right? So I'd say it's to introduce them to this concept of just not just journaling, but being able to really see how they feel every day.
Mhm.
How do you think the acronym SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time based? How do you think you can implement that into journaling, or to where it can be part of their goals, having them reach their goals?
Are you saying how am I going to help the plebes with their journaling process?
Yes, and with concept of SMART, to where
Sure,
it's
sure.
more.
So I think what I'm most excited about in being a youngster mentor is having the ability to have that ultra influence on a plebe, and not only showing them the ropes, but showing them what's the expectation of the academy,
Yep.
right? And I think one way that I can do that is setting a personal goal for myself, so that I reflect the standard of the academy.
How about them? How would you approach it to them? Like saying, you have a specific goal in mind, but what are their goals?
So how do I?
How would you set it for them, or like lead them in a way to where they?
Sure. So one of my goals for next year
Yeah.
is to have a meeting with every plebe in my squad before the first 6-week exam period,
Okay.
so that I can help them understand what their goals
Okay.
are, and in doing so, I'm not only setting a SMART
Yep.
goal for myself, but I can help them bring to fruition their goals using the SMART concept that we outlined.
Yep.
And in doing so, I can further my leadership style and also develop them as new midshipmen.
So you're saying about the development side, but how can you measure that to where you know that you are progressing forward or backwards?
Sure, I can measure that by whether or not I stay true to
Mhm.
that goal that I set for
Yep.
myself. So obviously right now it's really easy to say I'm going to be the best youngster, I'm going to be present, I'm going to be influential, but when the time comes to actually be in the mud, like go to their rooms, check on them every night, like that's when it's really going to define who you are as a person and who you are as a dedicated leader. And so I can measure that by how true I stay to my goal of having this meeting with every single plebe in the squad before the 6 weeks.
So you think with all that action, it's relevant to the goal that you're trying to attain?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I'd say from that standpoint, how long do you think that would take from you reaching out to them and then their goals?
How long for them to achieve their personal goals?
Yeah, I'd say so for like you reaching out to them and then to their goals, how long would that take you
I
from
think-
that process?
I think that's going to vary person to person depending on the timeline that they have for their goals.
Okay.
Because I think everyone's going to have a different timeline for their goals. You might have some people whose ultimate goal is to
Yep.
just commission, and become a naval officer, and you might have some people whose ultimate goal is to have a 4.0 in
Yep.
6 weeks or 12 weeks.
Yep.
So it's going to vary depending on the conversation that I foster with them.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying that you're gonna do is one, you're gonna check up on your people like every
Yes.
day. But I'd say the small standpoint, you said for every test you can make sure that they're actually prepared.
Yep.
And let's say you're gonna do it maybe 2 weeks before, and then that 2 weeks make sure that they're actually progressing and learning by testing them, and then let them know how confident they are with classes.
Mhm.
I say it's very nice.
So what about you? How are you going to implement a SMART goal with the influence that you have next year on the class of 2026?
I'd say it was similar to yours because I'd say we can only do so much. But
Exactly.
So if you say specifically what I'm trying to do is have a mindset to where here I'm just gonna hold on. I gotta think about this shit. This is actually pretty hard. So
You're good. Yeah.
I can just cut this out.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking about is with my people is the specific goal I'm gonna set for them is one is prono. Something that we always have to learn is and we can't avoid. So with that in mind, we always have a test on Friday, right? So I want to check up on them every day. And how I'm going to measure their intelligence, or not even intelligence, just the way that they're actually studying or being able to get these good habits of memorizing, is testing them, asking about them, making more conversational. And that will just help us flow more together to where you can be more comfortable with me and being able to have that professional relationship and bond.
Definitely. I appreciate that for sure. So we established one SMART goal we have for next year when we have plebes to lead of our own. What is one SMART goal that you have for yourself this summer through summer trainings?
I'd say for me is one of my goals is to work out and I'd be stronger because something I want to do is in jiu-jitsu is a big factor in jiu-jitsu is strength and endurance, and I want to get stronger at that. And specifically, I would want to work out a lot more frequently, maybe more 3 to 5 days per week,
Yes.
about an hour a day. And how I'm going to measure my strength is maxing out every last day of that week,
Sure.
or being able to just work out longer and then just push myself for that one day of the week. And how I know it's gonna be attainable is I'm gonna have people working out with me and making sure that I'm consistent with it. And I'd say with that, it will last about 3 months and see from my result from the beginning and the after. And how I'm gonna see my results also, it's kind of cheesy, but I want to take pictures to see
for sure.
progression.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then see that way. Sure, I feel like that's the best way to just really visualize where you're going.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I understand that. So SMART goal that I have for myself this summer is relatively new. I just had my goal meeting with my coach, and
Awesome.
by the end of the summer, I want to have a 2024 Olympic trials cut in the 200 back
Wow.
shield. A goal like that's pretty easy to measure. It's
Mhm.
whether or not you have it or not,
Mhm.
and it's pretty timely because you have to get it at a specific point,
Mhm.
and so
How long do you have to get it for?
I have it until May of 2024.
Wow.
So a little over 2 years.
Mhm.
But-
It's coming.
Yeah, exactly. It flies by. And I do think it's attainable. I'm about 4 seconds off right now, which shouldn't
Got
be that
it.
bad.
Mhm.
And I think I'm in a good place right now to have the accountability partners that are going to hold me to a standard that aligns with what I want to accomplish.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that's all for today.
Sounds good.
It's good.
This is our podcast.
Out.